So, Ricki and Annie, you described that you went in one day for a pitch meeting with Sheila. She happened to have read an article about the Boston Marathon bombing that day. So when was this? When did this project get launched?
In April of 2015, when the trial was happening. And then right away, Annie and I just started to do some research and found, very quickly that the Boston Globe had done this amazing long format reporting, and it stayed with the survivors. So we went back to Nancy and Sheila and said, this might be something that we should join with the Boston Globe, because John Tolmaki, who was with Celeste and Sydney, we felt it was important to get the early photographs and relationship, and that's how it all started.
Well, maybe I want to hear from people who were in the film, starting at the end, to tell me what this film means to you, or what stands out to you when you watch this.
For me, it was an honor to be part of such a wonderful documentary, because, as you know, there'll be movies that come out, but this is real life. This is what they all went through, and it's really, it's just an honor and a pleasure, because I can tell you they captured every moment like it really was.
I just think that it was, that day didn't end that day, and we still go through struggles several years later, and I thought it was important to let people know what we're still going through, and a lot of us have a lot of surgeries and, just daily struggles, and I learned a lot tonight seeing this film for the first time about what they've been through and others, and there's still other stories that I don't know still. So I think it sheds light on what everyone's still going through.
Celeste, let me ask you a different version of that question. What was it like for you having cameras following you through this period? Did you welcome the cameras? Were there times when you wish the cameras would go away?
Yes and yes. Yeah, there was, because we had, we signed on for this because of the trust that we had when we first met Annie and
Ricki. I was on that call with you for 2 hours, Celeste. Remember that?
I got bomb brain.
She's looking at you. She's like, help me here. Help me.
When we had been, so much press had been in touch with us, and we had done a lot of press, and there were a lot of press outlets that, frankly, I felt like we got burned by, or didn't report or sensationalize things and didn't say things that we said. So to be asked to do something like this is very scary, because when you sign on the dotted line, I remember asking if there's something that I don't like, or whatever, can we say we want to keep that out? And they were like, no. So I'm extremely proud of the finished product, and I'm very grateful to HBO for having the integrity that they do, and for not sensationalizing something that didn't need to be sensationalized, because the story in and of itself is horrific and heartwarming. I mean, there's so many emotions that you feel when you watch this, and I think it's unique in that the actual footage that was available to them. So you got to see firsthand, and hearing somebody say something is so different than seeing it on film. And it was so important that people see what terrorism is, like how awful it is and how it needs to be stopped. And those pictures depict that, and how we need to come together and support each other, like what happened to us, because it's still going on, as you know, and we need to have it stop.
Sydney, I wonder what the film means to you when you watch it.
God, this was actually like about my 6th time seeing it, and there's still things that I haven't quite picked up on, and so every single time I watch it, there's some kind of new emotion going on in my head. And the first couple of times, it was really hard, but it was very kind of humbling, just to see what everyone had gone through and to know that you weren't alone in this process, this healing process. And there are still so many things that I didn't know. Like, I didn't know how much Jess was suffering. And in the beginning, like, we were all just so, I guess, just taken up by everything that was happening. You weren't really aware of what else was going on. You were just so focused on this. And I guess just eventually it became really cathartic. This film wasn't at all like any other interview we had ever done. A lot of the interviews that we had done were just, it's the same questions over and over again, and it's the typical fluffy interview. Like, they're looking for you to say that everything's better now and it's all good. And that's not really how it goes. It's not realistic. So with it, Annie and Ricki, it was real, it was raw. And it didn't feel like we were being interviewed or anything. Whenever the cameras were on, it felt like they were getting everything. It was very honest, and they were just getting the whole process. So I really feel like it was so important for them to get that, because it really showed what happened. And I think that it's better for people to see this as opposed to some fluffy interview on the news.
Annie and Ricki, can you describe how you, as co-directors, divide your duties? If a shoot is going on, are you always both there? If someone's doing an interview, who's doing it? How do you manage that?
Well, we generally
How
start.
do you decide who answers this question first?
We'll look at each
Just
other.
like me and my mom, we point to each other.
I think part of it is we generally start the process together always, and I think that part of it is deciding what the story is, the focus, and then I think part of the introduction to characters, people who we may be coming into your lives, we do that together. And then there are certain times when it's literally timing, and sometimes one person may have a different relationship with people, and sometimes we tag team. I think I became sort of the Nordens, and you became the Corcorans, and it's sort of, and sometimes when.
Because JP was really hard to get on the phone.
Yes, until we discovered that Kelly, your wife, is actually the way to get you, because she always responds. But
You guys know what it is.
but I think that part of it is that sometimes if also, for example, if I felt like maybe you were ignoring my phone calls, then I said, well, Ricki, do you want to give JP a call?
I had you both saved, so I would hit end equally. Decline.
But
not
then
always
they'd call
easy.
me, and then I would have to say, in our house, this is JP's world, we just exist in it. And they'd be saying, where is he? And I'm like, where are you?
Golfing.
All right, let's take some questions from the audience. Raise your hand, I'll call on you. So the question is, how did you choose which families to focus on?
Well, we researched a lot of families, and through the Boston Globe, reading long format articles, it was important for us to pick 3 families that represented the bigger picture, and it wasn't just the visible scars, but the invisible wounds. And also, in the Norden story, you see how it impacts a mother. In the Corcoran story, you see how it impacts a father who was there, but had to be strong for his family, and then their son who felt so guilty because he wasn't there. So for us, it was really important that we wanted to try as best as possible to represent all the stories, because there are so many survivor stories, and we couldn't tell all of them.
I think the only other thing I would add is that we were looking for people who hadn't broadly shared their stories either. I think that part of the appeal was, as we started getting to know some of the background, you were sort of still very private.
Yeah. I think that the reason that I decided to do this was, you know, when you guys were telling me why you wanted to do it, how the bombers were always going to be remembered, and, you know, it's kind of the survivors get forgotten in a way, right? And I thought that when you guys brought it up and was like, you know, this is what we're doing and this is what we're going to do, again, I was probably the same as Celeste, a little skeptical, because I had pretty good experiences with media, but not always, you know. And but tonight, seeing this film for the first time, my mother told me how great it was. Celeste told me how great it was, but after seeing you swim, Celeste, woo! but I'm proud to be a part of it, and I think you guys did a great job, all you guys that were involved, and thank you for asking me, and my mom and my brother.
I don't think I've seen so much love for Boston and New York City before, but so there's an accomplishment right there. We're so grateful to you for coming down here and sharing your stories with us, and thanks especially to Annie Sundberg and Ricki Stern.
Thank you, Tom.